Good evening and welcome to tonight's Medtronic Diabetes webinar. Tonight we'll be talking about avoiding long-term complications with the MiniMed 640G insulin pump. My name's Dean Kanakis. I'll be your guest speaker. I'll be your host for tonight, And joining us are our two guest speakers. Third time returning, Dr. Sarah Glastras and Medtronic Diabetes Ambassador, Deborah Ledecky. Now, I'll just jump into a quick reminder. If you do have any questions for us during this live event, please feel free to reach out to us through our social media page. That's Medtronic Diabetes Oz, using the hashtag 640G webinar. Okay, so look, I'll just jump into the introductions now. So from the healthcare professional side of things, Dr. Sarah Glastras will be speaking for us. Dr. Glastras is an endocrinologist and research fellow affiliated with the University of Sydney and Royal North Shore Hospital. She's currently undertaking a PhD in the area of metabolic dysregulation and obesity, aiming to determine the molecular mechanisms that underlie the contribution of obesity towards end organ damage, in particular chronic kidney disease. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Glastras.
Thanks for the invitation, Dean.
Thank you. Okay, and our other guest speaker tonight, Deborah. Deborah's had type 1 diabetes for 31 years. She's also the director of CAMES for Kids, which aims to raise funds for children living with type 1 diabetes. Deborah also participates in CAMES for Kids runs. She ran 205 kilometres over 3.5 days to show the positive outcomes of using insulin pump therapy. And in 2013, Deb ran an astonishing 250 kilometres in support of the Brave Hearts Foundation, raising much needed funds. Thank you for joining us, Deb.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
All right, so we'll jump into our first question here. This one's for you, Deb. When you started on a pump, were you more concerned with short or long-term complications, and if so, why?
For me, the initial going onto a pump was more for the short-term complications. I was hypoing a lot and was hypo unaware when starting onto the pump. I guess the long-term complications weren't part of the picture at that point because it was a life-saving choice for me at that time. The pump initially, my HbA1c was sitting around the mid-8s when commencing on the pump, and within 6 months of starting on the pump was into the mid-6s and has remained there and even better in the 2 years following. I guess the long-term complications have come into it as a factor to something to look at and to take into account since seeing the benefits of the pump over the time I've been on it. So the fact of heart disease, stroke, all the nasty things that they say come with type 1 diabetes in later life. I'm very lucky. I have no secondary complications at all. So kidney, heart, eyesight are all perfect. And I'm planning to continue that way as a result of being on the pump.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so over to you, Dr. Glastras. I have a friend on the MiniMed 640G, and she sets her lower limit higher than suggested just to be extra safe and avoid hypos. Will this impact her risk of long-term complications?
So, firstly, that's a very common problem that people with type 1 diabetes face. If you've been unlucky to have a very severe hypo in the past that's caught you unaware, that you haven't been ready for, it's something that then you'll clearly be quite avoidant of into the future, and that can really lead to a real fear of having a hypo. So it's not surprising that a lot of people with type 1 diabetes, whether they're on an insulin pump or whether they're on multiple daily injections, often want to keep their blood sugar levels a bit higher to have that sort of buffer so that they don't go too low. So you see that a lot with MDI, and of course in the same way as you do with multiple daily injections, you can do that with an insulin pump too. So you can set the pumps to a higher level, much like this patient is referring to avoid going low. But I guess what I would suggest in that situation is what you want to do is start to trust the system that you're using. So if you're on a pump, one way to do that, especially with the MiniMed 640G, is to pair that alongside continuous blood glucose monitoring. So this is a system which will essentially talk to the pump and tell the pump that it's going that you're going low. If the blood sugar level is low or trending low, it will then shut the insulin delivery off so that it avoids the hypoglycemic episodes. And so by doing that, then you can start to trust a little bit more that, okay, this is okay, I can have my blood sugar levels a bit lower and I'm not going to go low. And in fact, even without CGMS, that continuous blood glucose monitoring, if you're on a pump and you start to really understand and trust the system they're using, slowly maybe you can start to bring that target down. And that's really important, because at the end of the day, why do we manage diabetes? It really is to avoid long-term complications. So having your blood sugar levels higher means that overall the sugar control is not as good, and therefore the risk of having complications into the future is therefore greater. Doesn't necessarily mean you are going to get those complications, but the risk is definitely increased. So the more you can bring your targets down and your sugar level, the variability that you have during the day lower, the better in terms of long-term complications.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastras. Guys, everyone out there, just a quick reminder, if you do have any live questions for us, please feel free to go to our Facebook page, Medtronic Diabetes Oz. We have a post there that our team is checking, and we'll feed those questions back into the live environment once they're posted. Okay, so back over to you, Deb. When trying to avoid long-term complications, what have you found is the best feature with this pump?
For me, as I said, when I started on the pump, it was more eliminating the hypos. I guess the pump since has given me tighter control. As I said, my HbA1c has remained within non-diabetic ranges, was my endo's choice of words the last time I saw him. I guess with the pump, the smart guard capabilities on the pump keeps it within range. So as Sarah was saying, it alerts before low and it alerts before high. So my awareness of what's going on gives me much, much tighter control. And it's that control in the long term that is going to avoid those secondary complications that we talked about before. I guess with the pump, also with the tighter control, it gives you more freedom. So for me, I can do an upload to Medtronic's CareLink system, which is easily done from my computer for my endo or my diabetic educator to look at. And we can make simple adjustments to keep everything within range. So diabetes being what it is, it varies day to day and what you're up to in life. And it's a simple adjustment here and there via the pump with my team to keep things within range.
All right, thank you very much for that, Deb. Okay, so back over to you, Dr. Glastras. Someone has submitted, I'm currently using injections, long and rapid acting insulin. How is a pump better if it is only using rapid acting?
Okay, so a pump is, an insulin pump is an insulin delivery system basically, and that's exactly right. It only uses rapid acting insulin, so that might be Nova Rapid or Humalog as two examples of short acting insulins. So you've got a couple of features with an insulin pump that are important. So you've got a basal rate as well as a bolus wizard. So the basal rate is much like your long-term insulin that you would otherwise use if you're on multiple daily injections, and it'll just deliver a very slow infusion of insulin in the background. So it's very much acting, so to speak, like that long-acting insulin. The advantage there on the insulin pump is you can vary that background rate. So instead of just plugging in, say, 24 units or something like that at bedtime, you can deliver the insulin at different rates slowly over that background 24-hour period. And then you've got a bolus wizard. So the bolus wizard is set up so that when you eat carbohydrates, you can enter in your blood sugar level, enter in how much carbs you're eating, and then the bolus wizard will do the work for you in terms of both suggesting the dose of insulin as well as delivering the insulin to you. And so that does have advantages in terms of sugar control, in terms of complications risk, all those sorts of things, because essentially you've got the one device and you're not having to do multiple injections every time you have anything to eat, like it might be a coffee or a yogurt or an apple or something like that in the afternoon. You can give a small dose of your, with your bolus wizard. So it's giving you lots more flexibility, and essentially that's why in many instances pump therapy is going to be superior to your multiple daily injections if you use it in the appropriate way.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastras. Okay, guys, just for everyone back home there, if you do have a question, just a quick reminder, you can submit them on Medtronic Diabetes Oz. We have a post there ready to go. Okay, so next question will be for you, Deb. Do you constantly wear the pump or do you disconnect sometimes? I can't see myself wearing it 24/7.
My main issue before starting on the pump was perhaps being connected to it. I think it seems to be a common issue with people that you're attached to something, and it's a device that's a constant reminder that you're type 1. I guess the biggest thing is where do you put it and how do you wear it? It's a very individual thing. I run, swim, wear it for all those sort of things, and you adjust to it. So for me, it's clipped to my hip most of the time. I can go to gala balls and wear it discreetly without it being seen, or I can wear it, hanging out of my pocket as I do doing the housework. As I said, it's a very individual thing and it's personal preference. As I said, I run with it on and I can do that without any issue. It's like wearing your iPod and absolutely no different to that. I swim with it on. Again, it's a personal preference thing. Swimming can drop your blood sugars. Perhaps you don't need to, but I keep it on. I guess, I disconnect from it for a shower without any issue. And I know that technically with CGM, there's certain ranges it works within. I can leave it sitting on the bathroom vanity and it still picks up my blood sugars from me being in the shower. So, look, again, it's a personal preference thing. When I sleep with it, I don't have any issues. It doesn't wake me up. I started out clicking it to my jammies of a night. Now it just floats freely around the bed and sort of rolls with me. It's one of those things, I think, as I said, it's very individual and you work that out as you go and what works for you. There's a lot of different products out there. There's belts that you can pop them in. And I know even Medtronic have a lot on their own website that are brilliant and you can discreetly wear it. Recently I had a lady ask me, I'm getting married, where do I wear it? And she clicked the pump to her garter. The only suggestion there I gave was that her new husband threw the right one during the wedding reception and not the one with the pump attached to it. But look, it's, as I said, very individual and you work it out. It's not a bigger deal as when you start on the pump as what you think it is. And I said that was my main issue, but it's something I've never had any problems with.
Thank you very much for that, Deb. Okay, so back over to you, Dr. Glastras. Next question. Is it too late to try and avoid long-term complications with pump therapy after using multiple daily injections for over 15 years?
So I think this is a really good question, and this has a lot of good validated scientific evidence to back this up. So the better your blood sugar control or your HbA1c, your glycemic control level, the lower your complication risk. So we've got really great evidence from actually the 1990s where they had a very large multi-centre international study done where they essentially randomised people to very tight control of their diabetes or at the time sort of standard of care, and that difference was about an HbA1c of 1% or so. And then they followed these people over time, and even after they'd finished the study, well after they'd finished the study, up to 17 years later, they saw the effect of that study during a 10-year period when people were being either tightly or less tightly controlled, showing that the group that had tight glycemic control had a 40% reduction in terms of cardiovascular disease. I think about a 30% reduction in mortality rates as well. So that just goes to show you that really it's never too late to get on board and improve your blood sugar control and your HbA1c, because it will have a very big impact for years to come. And that goes for people in terms of those who don't have any complications at all in terms of prevention, but also in terms of progression. So I can tell you a lot about chronic kidney disease because it's something I research a lot. And if you've already got the starts of some kidney impairment as a result of diabetes, if you get on board and improve your glycemic control, there's great evidence to show you that that will reduce the progression of the kidney disease as well as other complications related to it. So I think I would absolutely say never throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now is a good time to start trying to improve your diabetes control.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastras. Guys, just another quick reminder, if you're at home, you can reach out to us through our Facebook page or our Twitter. Okay, so back over to you, Deb. To get in the way of everyday life.
Quite the opposite, actually. With my pump, I find it lets me live life without issue and without the stress of diabetes. I'm fortunate enough to have CGM with my pump. And for the 32 years I've had diabetes, it's probably as close as I've felt to being normal, for want of a better term, as I've had in the last 2 years with the pump. Look, the biggest issue I have with the pump is getting it stuck on the car seatbelt when I take it off to have a look at my blood sugars when I pull up at the traffic lights and getting wound around it when I get out. It's not an impairment on life at all. In fact, it's probably given me my life back, and I wouldn't be without it. And one of the things I say, my son's 10, and if he got diagnosed tomorrow with type 1 diabetes, he wouldn't leave the hospital without being on a pump. It's the way of the future, insulin pump therapy, and it gives you life. It's not only life-saving, but it's life-giving in it lets you live an active lifestyle and a normal lifestyle, which is something I didn't have before starting on the pump.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Deb. Okay, so back over to you, Dr. Glastras. Question is, I struggle to keep my levels between 7.5 and 10, and I have a fear of lows. Could this pump give me better control?
So, yeah, look, I think the answer to this question is that insulin pump therapy can give you much better flexibility in what you're doing with your daily life. So instead of having blood sugar levels going all over the place, going high and then low, and then then you're low, and so then you're treating your hypo, and then you're flying up high again, you'll definitely get much less variability with insulin pump therapy. So that's a major advantage. So just getting on with your life and having a flexible life can certainly be improved by pump therapy. I think there's good evidence to show that with pumps you'll have a reduction in both the degree and the severity of hypos that occur. So you still, on insulin pump therapy, can go low, don't get me wrong, but often the severity is much less. So for those that have a lot of hypos, severe hypos, maybe unconscious hypos, maybe that they're not really aware of hypos until you're sort of hitting a 1.5 level, which is obviously very dangerous. Pump therapy is a very good thing to consider because it really will reduce the degree and the frequency at which you're having hypos. So yeah, I think that there's very good evidence in that regard in terms of insulin pump therapy for somebody who's wanting to try and get their range a bit tighter, both on the low and the high ends.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastras. Okay, guys, just another quick one. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us through our Facebook and on Twitter. Okay, so back over to you, Deb. How much pain does the pump cause, and is there bruising or scarring that you've experienced?
It's no worse than using MDI or injections. In fact, it's far better. One needle every 3 days as opposed to 5 or 6 or even more a day. There's no comparison. You might get the odd bruise with it, but no more than you would on injections. For me, having type 1 for 32 years, there was scar tissue in the areas that I had injected, but with the pump, that's far easier to negotiate and manage. And as I said, if I'd been on the pump 32 years ago, I wouldn't have that scar tissue. So there's no comparison. There's no pain putting it in. There's several different sets that you can use with the cannulas. You can choose from what works for the individual. Again, everyone's different. So there's choices there with how you use it and that sort of thing. So no, absolutely not. It's far better than injections, and I think any type 1 would agree. Injections really aren't much fun. The pump alleviates that completely. So, once every 3 days as opposed to 5 or 6 times a day, there's no thinking about it.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Deb. Okay, so back over to you, Dr. Glastras. Question is, how does the pump help reduce long-term complications and the impact of health issues?
Sure. So the bottom line to this question is that anything that's going to reduce your HbA1c, your blood sugar level control, improve your blood sugar level control, the more you'll then reduce the risk of long-term complications. So I think your advantage in terms of pump therapy, in terms of getting that HbA1c down, is to do with what we've just spoken about improving the tightness at which you're managing blood sugar levels, so reducing hypos, reducing high blood sugar levels, maybe alleviating some of that fear related to going low, so not trusting the system that you're using. All those factors are really important, not to mention the fact that, you know, when you're doing multiple daily injections, it's a big deal having to do, you know, 4 or 5 injections a day. So with your pump, you can do lots more little boluses along the way, so everything counts. Like I was saying before, you know, when you're having your skim flat white or your yogurt in the afternoon, you can simply give yourself a little bolus that then counts and adds up to the, you know, insulin delivery and improve overall the glycemic control, the variability, and hopefully in the end the HbA1c. And that is tested, it has been tested through and through for years and years, that reduced HbA1c, reduced glycemic control will improve and reduce complications in the longer term.
Right, thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastras. Okay, so Deb, back over to you. I'm always worried before I see my healthcare professional. Has going on a pump made a difference when you go to see your HCP?
Prior to going on the pump, I was one of those type 1s that didn't particularly get on with doctors or diabetic educators, I have to admit, or like going to see them, but nobody does, I guess. For me, starting on the pump, it gave me control of my type 1. I have an excellent team in my educator and my endo, and I think it's important to realise the pump's only as good as the information it has in it. So to get the most out of your pump, it's a team effort from your endo, your diabetic educator and yourself. And that's important to remember. So it's not plug in and off you go. It's a constant work and work in progress. For me, it's much easier because I can upload the pump to CareLink, and my diabetic educator can look at that and make adjustments, and I make the adjustments myself to the pump. The pump's no more difficult to use than it is using my iPhone. We all carry a phone around, so, you know, that's something to keep in mind. You can carry a phone around and use it. You can use a pump and make adjustments to it. But certainly now I feel like I have control of my diabetes. But again, it comes down to having a good team behind you. And certainly one of the things to do if you're starting on a pump or inquiring about starting on a pump, ask lots of questions. That would be the main thing I'd tell people. Whatever questions you come up with, if you watch this evening, write them down, ask your diabetic educator, ask them to go through it with you. Because if you don't ask questions, you don't find out, and that's probably the biggest thing. And that's with diabetes in general, is my finding with it. For me personally, is I'm not scared to ask questions, and nobody should be, because healthcare professionals today want good outcomes, as do we, for our long-term health.
All right, thank you very much for that, Deb. Okay, so back over to you, Dr. Glastras. What do you find are the most common concerns of your patients about to go onto the pump? And after being on the pump, do you find they are still concerned, or do they live a more carefree lifestyle?
So I think one of the most common concerns that patients often tell me when we're discussing options for management and thinking about a pump is really related to, you know, wearing a device or being reminded about their diabetes all the time. And so I hear that a fair bit, and I do appreciate that, and I can understand by wearing a pump with you all the time that it might be just that constant, you know, reminder of, oh, I've got to check blood sugar levels, oh, I've got to, you know, manage my diabetes. I guess you could probably look on the positive side of that in actual fact, that's, as Deb's mentioned, you know, sometimes when you come to insulin pump therapy, it actually really improves your focus and your motivation in actually improving your diabetes and keeping your eye on the ball a little bit more. So it's actually not a bad thing. I guess as well, I think we're all very, very au fait with gadgets these days. So we've got, you know, our iPhone or some other smartphone that's, you know, got Strava or some run app on it. So when we go running, we're, you know, tracking ourselves. I don't do 250 Ks like Deb does, but maybe 5. But, you know, like, you know, going for runs and things like that, you're always with gadgets. So it's not like it's, you know, we're really naive to that kind of world. So I think it's just one of those things that you really do actually get used to quite quickly. And of course, you can take it off for a shower. You can take it off for a, you know, swim for an hour if you're going to the beach or wearing, you know, bikini or so. Yeah, there's things that you can do. You don't have to be attached to it, you know, all the time, most of the time, but not all the time. So I think you can really get around that one. I mean, another concern that people often report to me, oh, well, you know, maybe I don't know enough about my diabetes yet. Like I don't think I'm really managing it quite, you know, really that well at the moment. Maybe I need to know more about my diabetes before I go on a pump. And I think the answer there is that at the end of the day, a pump is an insulin delivery system, and I couldn't just stress that enough. So it really shouldn't be something to be, you know, afraid of or think that you need to have, you know, all this knowledge before you can go on it. Obviously, you've got to check blood sugar levels, you know, regularly, and you've got to use your bolus wizard and things like that. So there's some things that are sort of prerequisites for going on a pump. But nonetheless, you don't have to be, you know, an expert in terms of its management. And I think you often see that your knowledge actually improves quite a bit when you do start on an insulin pump. So look, I think, you know, so the second part of that question about sort of having a more carefree life, I think absolutely it gives you much more flexibility, and you really feel like you're sort of a bit more on top of your game when you're on an insulin pump. So I think for a lot of people, maybe not all people, and as Deb has said lots of times, you know, everyone's different, and so it doesn't suit everybody. But for a lot of people, it is a really good option to consider.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastras. So over to you, Deb, for our final question. What would be your one piece of advice to someone thinking about making the switch to a pump?
The one piece of advice for me would be check it out and do it. For me, it's been life-changing and probably life-saving. The hardest part for me was probably making the initial inquiry. So for anyone that's watching this tonight, for example, or checks it out later on YouTube, you're already halfway there because you've got the interest. As I said, ask lots of questions, be comfortable with your decision. Because it's your life, and it's a big step going onto the pump. I know when I started on my pump, I'll be honest, there was times after I started on, I thought, oh God, this was the worst decision I ever made, because you go through those phases. It's a big change, particularly if you've been on MDI like I was for 30 years, to all of a sudden be doing something very foreign and very different. But as I said, the biggest suggestion I would give to anyone is do it. It's the best decision I've ever made for myself and also for my family, because diabetes is a team effort. It's just not the person with it. I've got a 10-year-old son and my partner, Brendan, and for them it's been life-changing too because the stress has gone out of it. So I have better control, I have better management. As I said, I'm lucky, I have access to CGM. And it's a team effort by all of us. My 10-year-old can press the home button on the pump and see that mum's blood sugars are good before I take him to school, which isn't uncommon. So it's the stress factor of diabetes that it has on the whole family unit. And the pumps relieve a lot of that stress for us as a family. So my big advice to everyone is check it out, make inquiries, and please give it a go.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much for that, Deb. Okay, guys, look, that concludes tonight's webinar. So I just want to say a very big thank you to Dr. Glastras and Deb for joining us tonight.
You're most welcome.
Thanks for having us.
And just before we go, guys, just please don't forget that we do have an excellent team here at Medtronic who are happy to help at any time. You can reach out to us through the number that you see on the screen there. That's 1-800-777-808, or via our Facebook page, Medtronic Diabetes Oz. We've got a great team here to help at any point in time. So thank you very much for joining us, guys, and everyone have a good night.